All right, we're back, Adam. UCLA last week, the Buffs looked really good against the Bruins. This week they've got Arizona State at home, looking to go 5-0. The Buffs are ranked now, number 21 in the country in the AP, number 22 in the coaches poll. Let's just kind of recap UCLA, and then later on this week we'll preview ASU.
Sure.
But your thoughts on the UCLA game?
Well, again, we saw second half adjustments really take shape, and for so long since we've been covering this program, it seems like that's one of the Achilles heels of this program is the fact that teams would adjust. They'd come out with a great game plan, other teams would adjust, and it's almost kind of the opposite now. Not to say they haven't had good plans coming out the gate. Until this last Friday, they had scored on their first possession in each game. So it's good to see that. I think last year DJ Elliott took a lot of flack, which was a little unwarranted. Even if Jim Leavitt had stayed here, they were going to struggle. They were going to take a step back defensively.
Right.
You've seen him be able to get more aggressive with things now that he has some experience on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and I asked Mike McIntyre about this after the game the other night, and he mentioned that this offseason Colorado put their entire defense in, just overloaded the players right off the bat so they could come back to it easier this time of year, game week. He said we couldn't do that with a new coaching staff last year. So DJ Elliott being back, the coaching staff for the most part being back, a lot of players being back, that helps in that. And you're right. I mean, I thought DJ took a lot of unwarranted criticism last year, but he really deserves a lot of praise for what he's done defensively. I mean, 2 games this year, Nebraska and UCLA, they've really been really good in the second half after not playing so well in the first half.
And they could have honestly played better. One thing that we talked with Mike McIntyre today is the fact that they've dropped a lot of could-be interceptions. McIntyre said he's counted 10 opportunities for them to, and made a good point that there are going to be games this year where they're going to need to be able to convert those plays against some of the better Pac-12 teams. And so if you're looking for one area of concern or criticism on defense, it'd be that you got to start creating some more takeaways on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and it's certainly a concern this week. That secondary has been a little bit shaky, been up and down. They got ASU this week, N'Keal Harry, which he's a pretty good receiver, one of the best in the country, but we'll talk more about that later in the week. But some of the top players from this last week, who did you think really stood out for you?
Well, I mean, obviously Laviska Shenault, Steven Montez. Jay McIntyre, if that play counted at the end of the first half, was one of the more impressive effort plays we've seen out of a Colorado player this year. Ronnie Blackman still looks a little uncertain back there, but he didn't make the big mistakes. He had the long return. You like to see that. James Stefano, it seems like he's back on track. He made his only field goal attempt. I liked a little bit of what we saw Frank Phillip, the true freshman at right tackle. McIntyre said that if it wasn't for him having an ankle injury early on during camp, we would have seen him quite a bit more. And again, Tony Brown is a guy that's continued to step up with Juwan Winfrey out.
Right. I thought it was too bad that play didn't count for Jay McIntyre because it was such a good play that he came up so fired up. But that would have been a big one at the end of the half. They could have gone in and scored, but obviously the penalty, the personal foul, and the holding and all that negated that. But I agree with you with those guys. I thought Javier Edwards, once again, was really good. I highlighted him after the CSU game. I thought he was dominant. I thought he was just as dominant the other night. Made a lot of big plays. I mean, only a couple tackles, but he was in the backfield a lot and really disrupted a lot. I think he's played really well this season.
He has. Again, it's not a position where you're going to get stats.
Right.
He's taken on a willingness to be a blue-collar type guy, and night and day difference between him. Also, we got to talk about Drew Lewis.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Such a feel-good story after the first couple of weeks. Not that he disappeared, but we're so used to seeing Drew Lewis make play after play. He had 119 tackles as a junior, and so you want to see that for him because he'd made such a selfless move and to be able to make some plays. And I think going forward you're going to see a lot more of that. And McIntyre said it was some of the stuff they saw with UCLA as well that allowed them to unleash him a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel good for him as well. I talked to him after the Nebraska game, and he felt really down, after making that switch. In CSU game, I think he only had a couple tackles. Felt like he let the team down. He came back and played pretty well against Nebraska, but that was his best game of the year against UCLA. I'd love to see a little bit more out of that, more out of Drew like that, because that was impressive.
It was. One other guy, Davis Price, we haven't really noticed the punting situation, which to me says he's doing a pretty admirable job until Alice Kinney gets back. So haven't had to worry about special teams aside from those 2 misses at Nebraska in the kicking game.
Awesome. Then one last thing before we go, I want to ask you this because the Buffs got a commit over the weekend. Can you just talk about the new guy real quick?
Yeah, Maurice Wilmer actually committed really, I think, like an hour before kickoff.
Right?
So I think it kind of went under the radar, but we talked about Cameron Farrar flipping from CU to Oklahoma State. This is a guy that can potentially play buff backer, if not become a jack linebacker, which is interesting because Maurice Wilmer plays cornerback for his high school team. He said when he came out here, oh, wow, okay, I'm actually bigger than most of the safeties on this program, so he kind of sees where he'll fit in, probably closer to the line of scrimmage. A 24/7 Sports 3-star guy. That's their 19th commitment. They've really loaded up with linebackers and secondary members, and they've got their O-lineman commitments pretty much on board. So at this point, it's a lot about defensive line recruiting for them going forward.
Yeah, almost a full class already. It's just October 1st. So Buff's doing well in recruiting. Buff's doing well on the field. And Adam and I will be back later on this week to preview the Arizona State game.